Morning everybody， 早晨。今日朝頭早呢，就有一上我去咗 Pacific Coffee 買咗4杯咖啡，咁啊送咗，而家冇晒啦。咁啊送咗3杯俾3個教會嘅人嘅。咁呢，同埋一個人話呢個係咪末期嘅禮物啊？呢個係咪因為我以前未送咖啡俾佢嘅，咁我話係嘅，聽日就耶穌會翻嚟，唔使錢，所以而家可以用晒嘅。咁係咪咁啊？係咪咁 ？A lot of people is saying these days that Jesus is coming back soon.
最近咧有好多人咧就話咧耶穌基督咧好快要翻嚟啦。
And we hear it from many people and from many sources.
我哋咧有好多人咁講，亦都有好多嘅資訊嘅來源係咁講。
And I say, oh, okay, good.
咁我就話好啊。
Let the end come.
讓末世快啲嚟到。
The world is a mess anyway.
因為呢個世界都好混亂啊。
Too many people are suffering hunger.
有好多人咧係飢荒啦。
Deprivation, war and sickness.
有好多嘅缺乏啦，同埋有好多戰爭啦，同埋疾病。
Even though my life is good.
縱然我嘅生活係好好。
And I enjoy it.
我好享受我嘅生活。
We have to think about the rest of the world.
都要諗下世界其他嘅人㗎嘛。
Not just about ourselves.
唔係淨係諗我哋自己。
Many of you people have been to Bangladesh and the Philippines and Indonesia and seen a lot of bad things in those countries.
印尼啊，去孟加拉啊，同埋邊度啊？菲律賓啊嚇，咁咧就睇到好多嘅缺乏。
I have not always wanted the world to end.
我唔係時時咧都希望咧末世快啲嚟嘅。
When I was young, I looked into my heart and I was afraid Jesus would come back too soon.
老實講，我後生嘅時候咧，我心裏邊咧係好驚耶穌好快翻嚟。
I wanted to live my life first.
因為我好希望咧能夠咧去活出我嘅生活先。
Maybe I felt that because I enjoyed life.
或者因為咧我好享受生活嘅。
I was young. I wanted to do a lot of things.
我後生咧，我想做好多嘢。
I wanted to find a girlfriend.
我希望有女朋友啦。
I wanted to have a family.
希望建立家庭啦。
I wanted to see the world.
我希望睇下呢個世界啦。
I wanted to do a lot of things before Jesus came back.
我希望喺耶穌翻嚟之前做好多嘢。
I'm pretty sure there are somebody here who have these dreams too.
我相信在座當中有好多人都有我咁樣嘅想法，係咪？
And it's okay to have those dreams.
其實有啲夢想都係啱嘅。
These are dreams and wishes that God has put into our hearts.
呢啲咁嘅夢想意念啊，係神咧將佢哋擺喺我心裏邊。
It's in our genes.
其實喺我哋嘅遺傳因子入邊
And that's how God made us.
神咧係咁樣去創造我哋。
But I feel a bit different now when I'm 60.
但係我今年60歲啦，我就覺得咧係唔同啦。
I can say I want to see God more.
我咧覺得咧，我想見上帝多啲。
I want to see Jesus more.
我想見耶穌基督多啲。
I'm more willing to pay the price and have him come back as soon as possible.
我希望咧去付出多啲代價咧，以致咧耶穌基督咧快脆啲翻嚟。
Why?
點解呢？
Maybe it's because I'm old.
係咪因為我老咗咧？
Or maybe it's because I trust Jesus more.
定還是因為我信耶穌基督嘅心多咗呢？
I hope it's the last reason, and I think it's the last reason.
原因嚇。
Because having served Jesus through His grace,
因為靠住耶穌嘅恩典去侍奉佢嘅當中咧
I think Jesus naturally teared down the fear inside our hearts.
耶穌咧佢將喺我心裏邊一啲嘅恐懼嘅牆咧係拆落嚟。
He teared down the fear about something we don't understand completely.
佢拎走咗我哋咧縱然唔明白嘅嘢，佢拎走咗，即係將我哋恐懼拎走咗。
And that is life in heaven, the end of the world. We don't really understand it completely what it's going to be
即係
like.
關於呢個末世係點將來嘅生命係點縱使我哋唔係完全明白。
But the more we are close to Jesus, the less we fear these things.
其實當你咧越親近耶穌咧，你就越少去恐懼呢啲嘢。
Okay, let's hear the text.
好啦，
and let us read it together.
咁我哋一齊嚟讀啊，馬太福音第25章。
No, not that one. The first one. Yeah.
馬太福音第25章1至13節。天國好比10個童女拿着燈出去迎接新郎，其中有5個是愚拙的，5個是聰明的。愚拙的拿着燈卻不預備油，聰明的拿着燈 又預備油在器皿裏。新郎遲延的時候，他們都打盹睡着了。半夜有人喊着說：新郎來了，你們出來迎接他。那些婦女就都起來收拾燈。愚拙的對聰明的說：請分點油給我們，因為我們的燈要滅了。聰明的回答說：恐怕不夠你我用的，不如你們自己到賣油的那裏去買吧。他們去買的時候，新郎到了，那預備好了的同他進去坐席，門就關了。其餘的同來隨後說：主啊，主啊，給我問油。他卻回答說：我實在告訴你，我不認識你，所以你們不認識，因為我係你們不知道。
This is a text about Jesus coming back, the end of times.
呢一段經文咧係講到末世咧，耶穌基督會翻嚟。
The end of the world as we know it.
就係話我哋呢個世界咧係會終結。
And Jesus is using the parable of a wedding to explain it.
耶穌咧用一個婚禮嘅言值，婚禮咧嚟到去呢個比喻嚟到去描寫。
To explain what is most important regarding his coming back.
同佢解釋咧就係即係跟佢翻嚟嘅時候咧，乜嘢係最重要。
In Hong Kong, it's very easy to understand the concept of waiting for the bridegroom.
喺香港咧，大家應該好熟悉啦，就係嗰個嘅嗰啲要等待嗰個新郎嚟接新娘。
Among our boys, we have many of us have been part of coming to fetch the bride.
即係我哋在座當中已經結婚嘅人咧嘅男士，應該係好熟悉嚇點樣嚟到去等待呢個新郎咧新娘出現嚇。
We have to negotiate with the bridesmaid.
我哋要同嗰啲咧姊妹咧嚟到去交涉啊嚇。
Play a lot of games.
要玩好多遊戲啦。
Do many silly things.
做好多傻事啦。
In order to be able to fetch the bride.
先可以接到個新娘出嚟嚇。
And so that we can take the bride to the tea ceremony.
所以我哋咧可以接新娘咧嚟到去翻到自己屋企咧去敬茶嚇。
And the bridesmaid better be ready when the boys comes to
當
fetch the bride.
嗰啲弟兄咧到之前咧，嗰啲姊妹們咧就一定咧要即係預備好啦，係嘛
？Anything would be a scandal if they hadn't
如果你未預備好咧，你就會係好論盡啦。
And being a bridesmaid, you have to look your best.
咁如果你係姊妹咧，你一定要扮到好靚啦，係嘛
？But not better than the bride, of course.
但係一定唔可以靚過新娘喎。
That would be another problem.
如果你唔係咧，又出現咗問題啦。
You know, whether bridesmaids in Hong Kong have to be virgins or not is another thing.
咁當香港嘅啲姊妹究竟需唔需要係即係同係咩？係呢個點樣譯啊
？Let's not talk about that.
有冇係咪童貞女咧？呢個我哋唔講啊，呢個問題啊。
But here, to be a virgin stands for purity and beauty.
喺呢個經文裏邊咧，呢個嘅童女咧係象徵着呢個嘅純潔同埋美麗。
It's nice to be among pure and beautiful girls.
當你出教日咧，能夠又被呢啲咁純潔美麗嘅姊妹們咧包圍住，一定係非常嘅好啦。
And the 10 girls in the parable are all very similar.
比喻裏邊嗰10個童女咧係好相似嘅。
They're all virgins.
佢哋咧都係未出嫁嘅。
And they all have brought lamps.
同埋每一個人咧係都帶住油嘅，油燈。
But the bridegroom doesn't come very soon. It doesn't come very fast.
但係咧嗰個新郎咧唔係好快就出現嘅喎。
So they fall asleep. They become sleepy and they fall asleep. 所以咧佢哋
咧就開始攰啦，同埋有時會瞌眼瞓啦。
But when he finally comes, all of them goes out to meet him.
咁當個新郎咧佢終於出現嘅時候咧，就嗰10個童女咧都會出去嚟到迎接佢嘅。
And that's where the difference between the 5 and the other 5 surfaces.
咁到咗呢個時候咧，嗰個5個聰明嘅童女同5個愚拙嘅童女嗰個分別咧就出現喺度啦。
5 of them lack the most important thing.
其中有5個咧係缺乏咗最重要嘅嘢。
They don't have enough light.
佢哋嘅燈裏邊咧係唔夠油啊。
They don't have enough light, so
所以唔夠光啊。
Because they haven't got enough oil.
因為佢哋唔夠油，以致佢哋咧就唔夠光啦。
And the 5 who have enough oil, they're not willing to share.
如果5個咧有足夠嘅油咧，佢又唔願意去同呢5個唔夠嘅咧嚟到去分喎。
Sharing would mean they wouldn't have enough for themselves.
因為如果佢同佢哋去分佢哋嘅油咧，咁佢自己都唔夠啦。
So the 5 who doesn't have enough oil has been pretty serious.
所以如果5個唔夠油嘅童女咧，咁個後果咧就幾重。
And the consequence is very, very serious.
後果係好嚴重嘅。
The bridegroom is offended and angry.
咁個新郎咧就好嬲啦，
He refuses to know them anymore.
佢唔願意再即係佢唔想再識佢哋啊！
They're shut out. The door is closed on them.
閂咗道門咧，將呢5個唔夠油嘅童女咧係關咗喺出邊。
You know, the story screams to us,
呢個故事咧向我哋嚟到去吶喊，
be prepared.
要準備啊！
Don't be partly prepared.
唔好咧，只係準備一啲。
If you want to have light, you have to bring the batteries too.
如果你要有光咧，你就要帶電池。
You can't only bring the torch. You
你
have
唔
to
可以淨
make
係帶
sure you have
電
fresh
筒，
batteries.
你要有足夠嘅電芯，
And they have to last for the time you need them to
而
last.
且啲電芯咧能夠咧係可以持續到你所需要嘅時間。
So the kingdom of heaven is serious business.
所以其實咧講到天國咧呢件事咧係一個好嚴肅嘅事情嚟
It
嘅，
will arrive just like the bridegroom,
就好似嗰個新郎咁隨時會嚟到，
like a shout in the night.
就好似咧突然間喺夜晚突然間有人吶喊一樣，
And it will take us by surprise.
佢會咧令你好驚訝。
But surprise doesn't mean you cannot be prepared.
但係令你即係驚訝咧，唔等於你唔可以預備嘅。
But those who want to join the kingdom of God,
如果你哋係想去喺天國有份嘅話咧，
you should join now.
你應該而家已經去加入呢個行列。
You don't know when it will arrive.
你唔知道咧，主耶穌幾時翻嚟？
And latecomers is not admitted. The door is shut on you.
遲嚟嘅人咧，就佢哋咧就唔可以入去啦。
Actually, many things in life are like that. We know this.
其實我哋喺人生嘅生活裏邊咧，我哋經驗都係咁嘅，係咪？
I heard about the guy who had a heart attack.
我聽到咧有一個人咧有心臟病，
And he was able to use his mobile phone and he called the ambulance and they came.
佢用佢個無線電話咧就叫咗十字車就嚟到啦。
He was able to tell them where he was.
佢可以話俾佢哋聽佢喺邊度。
And after he had told them where he was, he fainted.
咁之後咧，佢咧就暈咗啦，
He couldn't speak anymore.
佢唔可以再講嘢喎。
But he had already been able to tell them where he was, so they came to him.
但係佢咧有足夠嘅能量咧，去講俾佢聽，佢自己喺邊一度。
And then they saved his life.
咁嗰啲十字車嘅救護人員咧就救咗佢條命啦。
Wow, if that guy hadn't got enough batteries in his mobile phone, he might be dead today.
This can be me 係諗下，如果你個無線電話裏邊唔夠電咧，咁你就可能咧因此冇咗條命啊！
Yeah, I'm always chasing her to bring her mobile phone.
我成日都喺度叫佢帶佢無線電話。
At home, I call her mobile phone, and I hear it ringing.
好多時咧，我打俾佢咧就冇人聽啊！
It's by her bedside. Yeah, not good. So remember to take your mobile. Yeah. Okay. Back to the end of times.
好啦，我哋再講末世嚇，
It's serious business.
係好嚴肅嘅問題，
Just like the guy I told you about today.
就好似正話嗰個人咁樣樣，
He might have been dead.
佢可以死咗嘅。
So the kingdom of heaven, Jesus coming back, is serious
所
business.
以耶穌基督佢要翻嚟呢件事咧，其實係一個好嚴肅嘅問題。
And the problem is that nobody knows for sure when it will
個
happen.
問題就係話冇人知道咧耶穌係幾時翻嚟，
Only God knows.
只有神知道。
And He's not telling. At least He's not being very specific
起碼
about
咧
the
神
time.
咧都唔會即係話俾我聽好準時話，即係話俾耶穌係幾時一定會翻嚟。
On the other hand, there is a lot about the end of times in the Bible,
但係另外一方面，聖經裏邊咧亦都講好多關於末世嘅事情，
both in the Old Testament and the New Testament.
喺舊約同埋新約
It's about the time of persecution and trouble,
係講到咧係有患難啊、有逼迫嘅時候
of being shut out and left behind.
被關喺門外邊啊，
It's about God changing the universe.
係講到關於咧神咧要改變呢個世界。
He's promising us to give us no less than a new earth and a new heaven.
神咧要賜俾我哋一個新天新地，
So everything shall become new.
每一樣嘢都成為新的。
It's about Jerusalem being made new.
佢要講到一個新耶路撒冷，
No more fighting and bombs.
再冇戰爭同埋炸彈，
No more tears and crying.
再冇眼淚同埋罪惡，
But instead, streets of gold.
但係咧會有黃金街，
As happiness forever after.
會係永遠嘅快樂。
Except this time it's not a fairy tale.
除咗咧，即係但係今次咧就唔係一個嘅神仙故事，
The end of times is about the Garden of Eden.
係講到末世，就係講到咧，即係一個新天新地係一個伊甸園啊。
The Garden of Eden is brought back to us and we are let in again.
當時咧，即係亞當夏娃被趕出伊甸園，呢個伊甸咧，我哋會重新再進入去。
The first humans have been thrown out.
第一個嘅人類咧係被趕咗出嚟。
Adam and Eve was thrown out because they sinned.
亞當夏 灣因為佢哋犯罪而被趕出伊甸園。
But now everybody is let back in.
但係將來咧，我哋咧信耶穌嘅人咧，可以再次進入去。
It's about us going to heaven.
係講到我哋咧會進天堂。
And sadly about people being shut away
但係
from
嗰啲唔
God
准入
forever.
去嗰啲咧，被關喺門外邊嘅咧，嗰啲就好凄涼啦。
I started saying many people in our time say that Jesus is coming back soon.
我講到開始嘅時候咧，講到咧，其實最近有好多人咧話咧，耶穌會好快翻嚟。
And then I added, it's great, and I hope they're right.
而我亦都講話啊，好啊，我希望佢哋啱。
Because I'm saying it that way because personally I don't know.
我咁樣講係因為咧，我自己根本都唔知耶穌
I'm not
幾時返
sure if he comes back now or in a long time.
我唔肯定耶穌係咪而家翻嚟咧，定還是遲啲會翻嚟？
And let me say something that can be misunderstood.
嗱，我要講一啲嘢，希望你唔會誤會。
The important thing is that when Jesus comes back, the important thing is not when Jesus comes back,
有關主耶穌基督翻嚟呢件事，其實最重要嘅咧，唔係話耶穌幾時翻嚟，
but that we are always prepared for the possibility.
而係我哋係時時刻刻都預備佢會翻嚟。
Of course, if you look at it from another angle, Jesus coming back is the most important thing of all.
當然啦，從另一個角度嚟睇，耶穌基督翻嚟咧係一個最重要嘅事，
Because it's the end of the world as we know it.
因為係講到末世嚇，
And it's also beginning of something we know very little about.
而都係講到呢一個新嘅開始，係我哋即係知得好少嘅呢個，
So it really changes everything.
所以係會將一切嘅都改變。
And you know, iPhone has a commercial
iPhone 咧，知唔知有一個廣告咁講啊？
that says, now everything is changed again.
佢話咧，所有嘅嘢咧，而家咧再次被改變。
Or rather, this changes everything.
佢就話，又或者話咧，呢一樣嘢咧會改變所有嘅嘢。
Now the end of the world is not like the iPhone
而
change.
家我哋講到咧，呢個末世咧並唔係等於呢個 iPhone 所講到嘅
Because
改變。
iPhone doesn't change anything.
其實 iPhone 咧唔係改變任何嘅嘢，
Jesus coming back changes everything.
係耶穌基督佢翻嚟係會改變所有嘅嘢。
So, in many ways, the question, when is Jesus coming back, is not a relevant question.
所以有關耶穌基督幾時翻嚟呢個問題，根本咧就唔係一個好合適嘅問題嘅。
It's not so relevant whether he comes back soon or late.
所以有關耶穌基督究竟佢幾時翻嚟，好快翻嚟或者遲啲翻嚟，其實都係唔係一個好重要嘅嘢。
I need the PowerPoint. Yeah. Let's read that together.
我哋一齊嚟讀。所以你們要警醒，因為不知道你們的主是哪一天來到。家主若知道你今天有賊來，就必警醒，不容人挖透房屋。這是你們所知道的，你們也要預備，因為你們想不到的時候，人子就來了。
And back in the text I read earlier today, we also read this. Let's read it
我哋
too.
再讀25章13節，所以你們要警醒，因為那時候你們不知道。
So, be ready is the most important thing.
要準備係最重要嘅嘢，
Be always ready as we do not know the time.
因為我哋唔知道個時間係幾時，呢件事幾時發生，所以我哋要時時刻刻嘅準備。
Suppose we knew the answer to when Jesus would come back.
又假如啊，如果你知道耶穌幾時翻嚟嘅話，
Or maybe we knew that it would happen within the next 5 years.
又或者你知道咧耶穌咧喺5年之內會翻嚟嘅話，
Would that make any difference?
會唔會有咩唔同咧？令你
Can you raise your hands? You think if it will make a difference to you?
如果你覺得你知道耶穌基督會翻嚟嘅時候，會唔會令你嘅生活或者生命有咩改變啊？你
Do you understand the
有嘅
question?
人你可以舉手，你
If
覺
you
得
knew it,
如果你知道耶穌
would
基
it
督
make a
翻嚟
difference?
會唔會有唔同咧？可以舉手，如果你覺
Are
得
you。afraid to raise your hands, or
你
you
係咪
don't think it will make a
你係咪
difference
唔
to
敢舉
you?
手，還是你覺得係唔會有唔同啊？
Okay, you just fell into my trap.
啊，
Okay.
呢啲落咗我為你設嘅陷阱裏邊啦。
So, if you knew Jesus would coming back, it would make a difference to you.
如果你知道耶穌幾時翻嚟，你又覺得咁樣係會有唔同嘅話咧，
Would you change your life?
你會唔會改變
The way
你
you
生
live your
活啊
life？
你會唔會改變你點樣去生活咧？
Would it change the way you treat people?
會唔會改變你點樣去對人嘅方法咧？
Would you be nicer to your wife,
會唔會對你老婆好啲咧？
to your family,
對你家人好啲
to
咧？
your kids?
對你嘅細仔好啲咧？
Would you be nicer if you knew that Jesus was coming back within the next 5 years?
如果係耶穌喺5年之內會翻嚟嘅時候，你係會唔會對你周圍嘅人會好啲咧？
Maybe would it make you choose to become a missionary?
或者你會唔會成為宣教士呢？
Or maybe you would choose to go on the STM instead of going on that holiday you have wanted for so long time?
或者你會選擇去呢個短宣而唔去選擇放假呢？
You know, something, I had a very nice holiday in France with my wife
嗱，我上年
this
咧
summer.
就啱今年暑假同我太太喺法國有好好嘅假期。
And after France, I went on the STM.
係去完法國之後咧，我就加入咗短宣隊。
My holiday in France was very nice.
我喺法國嘅假期好好，
But my STM in Japan was even more interesting.
但係我個短宣
Short-term
短宣咧就更加更加有趣味。
I saw people change, having their lives change.
我睇到有人嘅生命被改變。
But anyway, let's talk about the end of times again.
但係無論點樣，我哋再講翻呢個末世嚇。
Would you not buy that car if you knew Jesus were coming back?
如果耶穌好快翻嚟嘅時候，你會唔會買嗰架車咧？
If you knew that Jesus was coming back in the next 5 years, would you sell everything and give to the poor?
你會唔會將你所有嘅嘢變賣嚟到將得嘅錢嚟到去俾啲窮人
Be
咧？
generous to your friends?
對你嘅朋友好慷慨咧？
You know, if you answered yes to that question, and
Really?
maybe I would have raised my hand too if I was honest to myself.
如果你係話係嘅話咧，同埋我自己如果我真係要好誠實嘅話咧，我都會舉手。
You fell into a trap.
咁咧，你哋咧即係舉咗手嘅人咧，就跌咗一個陷阱入邊。
You know, if you really think that Jesus coming back will make you change
如果你真
yourself,
係咁樣認為耶穌基督翻嚟咧係會改變你自己嘅話，
there is something wrong in this thinking.
呢一個咁樣嘅思想咧，其實有啲錯喺裏邊。
You know, because if Jesus is telling you to be a missionary,
如果耶穌話要你做宣教士，
if Jesus is telling you to be a better husband or a better wife,
如果上帝耶穌同你講你要做一個更加好嘅丈夫或者太太，
if you know that you should be nicer to your kids,
如果你知道你要對你嘅細蚊仔好嘅話，
you shouldn't do it because Jesus comes back. You should do it anyway.
你唔應該因為耶穌基督翻嚟你先至做呢啲咁樣嘅事情，而係
No
應該時
matter
時刻
whether
刻都
Jesus
咁
is
樣做。
coming back tomorrow, in 5 years, or in 100 years,
無
you
論耶
should
穌係
change now.
即刻翻嚟，或者5年之內翻嚟，或者100年之內翻嚟，你應該由今日開始係即刻去改變。
Because in this church we know that we should do what Jesus wants us to do,
喺呢個教會
not
裏邊
tomorrow, but now.
因為我哋喺個教會裏邊，我哋所講嘅就係話咧，我哋要做耶穌要我哋做嘅嘢嚇。
Jesus coming back sooner or later is no reason to delay his will.
耶穌基督佢幾時翻嚟係對我哋咧點樣去生活啊？即係按住佢嘅旨意去生活都係冇改變呢樣嘢。
So the most important thing is not knowing when Jesus come back, but what he wants you to do with your life.
所以最重要嘅嘢唔係話要知道耶穌基督幾時翻嚟，以後咧去做耶穌基督要你做嘅嘢。
A church has to do more mission because Jesus is coming back.
教會去做多
Somehow
啲嘅
this is wrong.
教會去做多啲嘅宣教，唔係因為耶穌基督要翻嚟，
Don't misunderstand. To do mission is good.
佢做宣教係好嘅。
But then all churches should do mission, right?
每一個教會都應該做宣教，係
We
咪？
should do as much mission as we can.
我哋應該係盡量去做多啲宣教。
That's why we're going out on the
所
16th.
以因為因為咁樣，我哋12月16號要出去，
So using Jesus is coming back soon to do more mission.
用咧耶穌基督就快翻嚟呢一個咁嘅講法咧，成為你去做宣教嘅原因咧。
Because mission is something we are supposed to do anyhow.
其實係唔啱嘅，因為做宣教咧，你係幾時都要做嘅。
On the other hand, of course, it's not easy to, it's not difficult to understand how people are motivated by such a thought.
但係當然咧，我哋都會好明白點解啲人咧係因為耶穌基督就快翻嚟，所以佢哋咧被推動咧去做更多嘅宣教。
When time is short, we feel things are more urgent.
當咧時間得翻好少嘅時候咧，你覺得嗰啲嘢係好重要啦。
We are pushed to work harder.
我哋咧係被佢驅趕啦，嚟到驅使咧嚟到去做即係更多。
But this is not a good motivation.
但係呢個唔係一個好嘅動機，
Because to scare people is not a good
因為
motivation.
咧去令人哋恐懼啊，唔係一個好嘅做法。
We should share the gospel with people because we want them to have a good life.
我哋同人去分享福音係因為我哋想佢哋嘅生命咧係會變得更好。
So that they can have their life changed.
希望佢哋嘅生命被改變，
And they can have an eternity with God. And
佢
be
哋能夠
prepared for
永遠與
that.
上帝同在。
Martin Luther was a very wise guy.
馬丁路德係一個好聰明嘅人，
He said something like this.
佢講過咁樣嘅嘢。
Even if I thought that Jesus would come back
佢
tomorrow,
話：如果耶穌基督明日再會翻嚟，
I would plant the apple tree in my garden
我
today.
仍
If
然
that's
會
what I had planned to
仍然我
do.
會喺今日咧喺我花園裏邊咧去種一棵蘋果樹，因為我一直以嚟都想咁樣做。
Now we all know that apple trees takes years to bear fruit.
我哋知道蘋果樹係需要幾年先會結果嘅。
And it's useless to do it today if Jesus is coming back
如果
tomorrow.
耶穌聽日翻嚟，其實今日種蘋果樹根本係冇乜意思，係咪？
But Luther is really saying he is not certain. Nobody can be certain about when Jesus is
但馬丁
coming
路德
back.
嘅講法嘅意思就即係話，其實係冇人係知道耶穌基督幾時翻嚟。
We don't need to scare people to Christ.
我哋都唔需要咧去恐嚇人哋叫佢哋信耶穌，因為耶穌聽日要翻嚟咁。
God can do that himself.
神佢自己會去
God can scare people
神佢
himself.
自己佢會去使到人去震驚。
Because life is scary
咁其實
sometimes.
生命咧有時係都會係令人哋好震驚。
Some years ago, a close relative of mine got a heart problem.
幾年前我朋友
一個relative.
我嘅親戚咧有一個心臟病，
And he really died. He nearly died from it.
佢差唔多死嘅。
And after he came back from the hospital, he didn't die. He came back from the hospital. He started to go to church.
但係佢死唔去喎，咁喺出咗院之後咧，佢就開始咧去教會啦。
You know, he was probably scared.
我諗佢真係驚。
Who wouldn't be?
邊個唔會驚？
My own father in Norway, he also decided to become a Christian when he became seriously ill.
我喺挪威嘅爸爸咧，佢都係因為咧佢好嚴重病嘅時候咧，佢先開始翻教會。
Later, he died from it.
咁啊，跟住咧佢就死咗啦。
I don't mind confessing that one of the reasons I became Christian was because I was afraid of death.
我都要承認咧，係其實我成為基督徒嘅其中一個原因就係因為咧我都係怕死，
So I made the choice of the wise virgin.
所以我咧就做咗一個決定，就好似嗰5個聰明嘅童女一樣，
Better be prepared for it.
要準備，
Better be prepared.
要準備。
Let me tell you something really scary related to death and Jesus coming back.
關於死亡同埋關於耶穌要翻嚟嘅事咧，我想同你講一啲值得我哋驚嘅嘢。
Many years ago, I attended a missionary preparation school in London.
幾年前咧，好多年前啦，
好多年前係咯83 together with you.
1983年啦嚇，同我老婆咧喺英國倫敦咧預備做宣教士。
So it was a lot of years for her too, huh? Yeah, you don't want to translate that. It was a lot of years for you
好
too.
多年前啦係。
Yeah.
20年前係咪？
And the headmaster shared
30年前
some of his philosophy about time.
咁當時個院長咧就同我哋分享一啲關於佢對時間嘅睇法。
And it must have made a strong impression because I'm still remembering
因
it.
為我而家都仲記得，所以我諗一定咧佢講嘅嘢咧係留下好深刻嘅
But
印象。
maybe I'm
喺我
become
腦
so
海
old now that I'm starting to remember the things when I was a young man.
同埋我而
and
家
a
開始咧
child.
夠老嘅，所以我開始咧去記得翻後生嘅時候發生嘅嘢。
The headmaster's name was Patrick
佢
Sukdeo.
個名叫 Patrick Sugdale。
If you Google his name, you can still find him. He's still
如果
around.
Google 佢咧，佢名佢仲揾到，因為佢仲
He
存。
was an Indian,
佢係一個印度人，
but he had become a Christian.
但係成為一個基督徒。
And he had left Islam and he had become a Christian.
咁佢咧就係本來係回教徒啦，但係後來咧就係歸向咗基督。
So his parents threw him out
咁佢嘅父母咧就將佢趕出
and
趕
counted
離
him
屋
as
企
dead.
嚇，
And they counted him as
當佢
dead.
咧死咗冇呢個仔。
I remember he told us his story that his family had cut off all ties to him.
佢屋企咧同佢咧係完全斷絕任何嘅聯繫，
But he chose to become Christian.
但係佢都選擇成為一個基督徒。
But to him, a bit like the Chinese and the Buddhists,
對佢嚟講咧，即係其實佢幾似中國人或者嗰啲佛教徒。
the time was kind of a wheel.
佢咧睇時間咧，佢覺得係一個好似一個嘅輪啊，一個時間嘅輪。
And the time was going like seasons.
佢覺得時間咧係
Summer,
好似咧
winter,
四季咁
spring,
咧係
autumn.
循環不息嘅。
And when people were born, they came into time.
當人咧係出生嘅時候咧，佢就進入咗呢個時間嘅巨輪入邊。
And when people die, they left time.
當人咧死嘅時候咧，佢就離開咗呢個時間嘅巨輪。
On the other hand, he didn't believe in reincarnation.
另外一方面咧，佢亦都唔相信人可以重新投胎做
So
人啊。
he didn't talk about that, how he thought about that.
佢冇講。
But in the middle of his time, real time,
但係佢覺得喺個時間嘅巨輪嘅中間咧，
God was in the middle.
佢話咧上帝喺中間。
So he was outside time and yet inside the wheel.
而咧神咧，佢雖然喺個時間嘅巨輪中間，但佢亦都喺時間嘅以外。
And he could reach any time he wanted from his from the position in the center.
喺佢喺個中心裏邊咧，神咧可以去任何嘅時間一點都可以。
He could go to the past and the present and the
佢
future.
有去到過去、現在或者係將來。
It's quite an amazing picture.
佢咁樣諗咧，呢個圖畫其實都幾得意嗬。
And because to God, past and present and the future must be all the same.
因為對上帝嚟講，其實過去、現在、將來對佢嚟講都係一樣。
Because He's outside
因
time.
為
He's
上帝喺時
eternal.
間以外，
Time doesn't
佢係
have
永恆嘅。
Time doesn't have any meaning for God.
對上帝嚟講，時間係冇意思。
So if Patrick was right about time,
如果呢一個人佢對時間觀念係啱嘅話
it
咧，
has some important implications for all of us.
對我哋每一個人嚟講咧都有重要嘅意義啊！
When we die,
當我哋死嘅時候咧，
when our time comes to an end,
當我哋嘅時間喺地上時間咧嚟到去結束嘅時候咧，
we return to face God.
我哋咧就會去面對神啊！
Our world has ended.
我哋嘅世界咧就完啦。
In this sense, the end of times is coming all the
其
time.
實如果係咁樣睇嘅時候，即係末世係時時都嚟嘅，係咪啊？
Of course, we don't know if it's really like that, but
當然
this
我
is
哋
a
唔知道
picture
佢咁樣諗係咪啱咧，佢對時間嘅
to
睇
make
法。
us
但係
understand.
呢一個係一個幅圖畫，令我哋去明白。
I'll tell you something scary, the scary part.
即係佢加多句得唔得？
I'll tell you something scary about death.
啊！我想同你講下關於死亡嘅
Yeah.
恐懼。
Do you know how many people dies every moment?
你知唔知咧
Every second？
你知唔知咧係每一秒啊係有幾多人死喺呢個世界上面？
I Googled this question.
我咧就去 Google 啊呢個問題。
How many people in the world die every second?
每
Literally,
一
I
個即係
Googled
世
it.
界裏邊每一秒有死幾多人？
And I got a lot of hits.
咁咧就有好多嘅答案出現啦。
And I suggested about 1.8 person dies every
你
second
就話
all
每
the time.
一秒咧就有1.8個人死。
And then if you add that up, you find that 100 humans die every minute.
咁咧就每一分鐘咧就有100個人啊死啊！
150,000 humans die every 24 hours every day.
咁咧就180 how many？
150,000.
50 15萬人死啊！喺一日裏邊有15萬人死。
And that's scary to
咁
think
係咪好
about.
恐怖啊？嚇！
I don't like to think about
唔
that.
係好想咁樣去諗。
And that's not about faith or belief. That's kind of a fact.
呢個係一個嘅事實啦嚇，呢個唔係一啲關於信仰或者係信乜
There's
嘢。
another fact about 80% of those people are not Christians.
而咧喺呢啲死嘅人嘅當中咧，係80%嘅人咧係唔係基督徒喎？
They are Muslim, Taoist, Buddhist,
佢哋係
ancestor
回教
worship,
徒
atheists.
啊、道教徒啊、佛教徒啊、
They belong to all kind of
拜祖
religions.
先啊嗰啲人啊嚇，或者各國嘅宗教。
Now the Bible says that there is only salvation in one name.
啊，聖經裏面話俾你聽咧，佢話咧喺呢個天上地下人間，只係有耶穌基督嘅名係可以靠著得救。
Salvation is found in no one else but Jesus.
嚇，只係靠著耶穌基督嘅名可以得救。
For there is no other name under heaven given to men by which we must be saved.
除咗耶穌基督之名之外咧，係冇人可以靠著其他名得救。
Now, when I die, I'm sure to meet Jesus.
當我死嘅時候，我知道咧，我會見耶穌。
And what is certain is that I'm able to influence that by making actions now.
我知道咧，我今日點去生活咧，係會影響我去面對耶穌嗰一刻。
So the question should not be when does Jesus come back?
所以
The
個問
question
題
should
咧，應
not
該咧就唔係話耶穌幾時翻嚟，
be, but what can I do to make
而係
Jesus come back?
我今日可以做啲咩嘢，以致咧耶穌係會翻嚟。
It's a very good verse in Matthew 24:14.
馬太福音24章14節咁樣講，
Let's read it
我哋一
together.
齊讀啊！這天國的福音要傳遍天下，對萬民作見證，然後末期才來到。
So this is not about when Jesus come back, but what we can do to make him come back.
經文咧講到咧，就唔係有關耶穌幾時翻嚟，而係我哋做啲咩嘢可以令耶穌翻嚟。
By preaching the Gospels to the end of the
要
world,
去將福音傳遍天下。
he has promised to come back.
耶穌咧就係應許要翻嚟，
And that should be our motivation
呢個應該係我哋嘅動機。
in most things we do in this life.
喺我哋一生裏邊所做嘅嘢，成為我哋嘅動機。
Amen.